That's right. Back again. It is currently 6:02 on this Sunday, the 20th of March. You're listening to the 6-8 with DJ Eclectic. I'm your host, Christopher Haig. Thanks for tuning in and listening. So, oddly enough, another blur of a week. I don't know. Well, I know what happened this week. We jumped forward an hour this week, and I've just been so off base all week. It's crazy. I woke up, even for the show Sunday, like, aside from the show last week, I don't remember a thing I did on Sunday. And that's definitely not okay. But yeah, another blur of a week. Bit of a brisk week, too. I don't know, things were getting warmer, but there was enough of a breeze and enough wind to make things seem cold, which I wasn't a fan of, because, like, I know the sun's out. It's supposed to be warm. Why isn't it warm? But yeah, but temperatures were fine. It was just the wind was a bit more than a bit annoying. And I think looking at the weather, we're going to have another one of those weeks. So we got something to look forward to. All right, we're going to take a break here. When we come back, we'll get to some news and our first check of this week's weather. Why is Gawker now down $115 million? And what job can you apply for in Japan right now? All that and more when we come back to the 6-8 with DJ Eclectic here on WQBR Eagle Radio. But now, I want y'all to get busy with some Sean Paul. Alright, that was Cleaning Out My Closet by Eminem. Before that was Crazy by Gnarls Barkley. It's currently 6:15 on this Sunday, the 20th of March. You're listening to the 6-8 with DJ Eclectic here on WQBR Eagle Radio. I'm your host, Chris Haig. Thanks for tuning in and listening. Alright, going to jump right into the news with probably one of the most high-profile court cases in a while. So, if you're a fan of wrestling, or were a fan back in the 80s and 90s, you'll know the name Hulk Hogan. Recently he's been in the news a lot because he's been fighting Gawker over the sex tape that they released back in 2012, I think it was. Yeah. They released it in 2012. And he's been fighting them for on the basis of invasion of privacy, while Gawker's firm defense has been that the release of it was under the First Amendment, freedom of speech, and all that. So they've been in court for a while, and just recently the jury came back in the favor of Terry Bollea, who is the man behind the Hulk Hogan character, and gave him awarded him $115 million. This is Friday, out of St. Petersburg. They were debating for nearly 6 hours before siding on the side of Bollea. And his defense was actually pretty incredible. So if you're a fan of 80s and 90s style wrestling, you'll know how seriously they took this wrestling term called kayfabe, which is keeping up the character you're given. Terry Bollea's character was Hulk Hogan. And Gawker said they had almost like the green light to post it because Hulk Hogan had been bragging about his sex life and the size of his endowment. And so they figured he's already talked about it publicly, we can release the tape. Terry Bollea's defense was that it was Hulk Hogan bragging, but Hogan was just a character. Because that was the era of wrestling that he grew up in. You know, where kayfabe was the law of the land in WWF and WCW. So his defense was that Now, while yes, Hulk Hogan may have 10 inches down there, myself, Terry Bollea, does not. And it's a pretty incredible defense, and I knew from the off that it was going to work, so I'm glad the jury ruled in his favor, but I'm not at all surprised. And now Gawker is out $115 million. Excuse me. Gawker's legal team argued that posting the video was protected by the First Amendment. And they're looking for an appeal to the case. So, obviously, Gawker's not happy about it. They really do believe that their actions are protected by the First Amendment, but the 4 women and 2 men jury decided otherwise. And I'm going to go ahead and play you a news report from the case. This is from Friday.
Hug. You were discussing Hulk Hogan's penis.
Yeah, because Terry Bollea's penis is not 10 inches like you're trying to say.
All right.
It's not mine, because mine isn't that size, but we were discussing the length of Hulk Hogan's.
Seriously? So, you
No, seriously, I do not have a 10-inch penis. No, I do not. Seriously.
Fair enough.
Sometimes when I wear a bandana as Terry Bollea, it's just because it's like a self-confidence thing where if I don't have the bandana on, it's kind of like hard not to look at, how bald-headed I am and how big my head is. My gut was telling me that this was off, this was wrong, and from the feeling I had, I said, "Bubby, you're not filming this, are you?" And he just splashed into me. "What the hell's wrong with you? I'm your effing best friend. How dare you say that to me?" When they confirmed that Bubba was on the tape, and Bubba went up and turned the camera off, and Bubba told Heather that this is for our retirement, Heather, I just started violently shaking. I couldn't.
Yeah, so the tape was filmed without any of their knowing, as you heard. Both Hogan and Heather in the video had no idea that it was being taped. And the Bubba he was talking to is Bubba the Love Sponge Clem, who made the video without either their permission or knowledge. And that was going to be a key witness for Gawker's legal team. And the the judge quashed Gawker's subpoena to have Clem testify, saying that he wasn't trustworthy enough to be put on the stand, and very obviously so. The $115 million is divided into $55 million for economic injuries and $60 million for emotional distress. And actually, the same jury will be back on Monday. It will either be tomorrow or Tuesday to consider punitive damages on top of the already massive $115 million. Yeah, I mean, you could hear it in the video as he was describing his defense, and even the lawyer who was questioning him was like, I mean, really, dude, come on, really? Like you were talking about your character, but not yourself. That was the basis of his defense. Because, and you could also hear him explaining the bandana that that the character Hulk Hogan wears all of the time. And he was like, Hulk Hogan has 10 inches down there, and that's all well and good. I don't have that much down there. And so Gawker's entire reasoning for, being able to justify posting the video was out the window. And like I said, I knew from the off, as soon as I read what Bollea's defense was going to be, how he was going to handle his side of the case, I knew immediately, okay, yeah, no, Gawker just lost this. It's like there was no way they were going to be able to combat that. Now, if this had happened now, or with a wrestler from this era, there's no way that defense would work. And kayfabe died in 96, but because Hogan was around before that, he beat Gawker for more than $100 million. And he cried. He did actually cry when the jury came back and awarded him the money. Now, something interesting from Gawker attorney Mike Sullivan. He's on record as saying, quote, "We will all be worse off as a result." After warning that Hogan's lawsuit could have a chilling effect on free press if powerful celebrities, petitions, and public figures would use our courts to punish people. So it's obvious that we have somebody who believes in the First Amendment, no matter what the situation is, above everything else and anybody else, and a defense that proves that that doesn't work all of the time. So it'll be interesting to see what the jury comes to as a decision on punitive damages either tomorrow or Tuesday, but it'll also be interesting to see whether Gawker actually decides to have this appealed or not. I hope they do, because this is very, very entertaining to watch. And I know that if they do, the judge in appeals court is going to find the same sentence. And I really don't think there's a way that this can get overturned. Not with how solid Bolia's defense was. Moving from St. Petersburg over to Japan, and I promise you I'm not making this up. This isn't a joke. A job you can apply for in Japan, knowledge of speaking Japanese isn't required. For $20,000 a year, you can apply to be a ninja in Japan. They're looking for 6 ninjas, acrobats with media experience preferred, don't have to speak Japanese. Like I said, $20,000 a year. So what's actually going on is there's a team of performing ninjas. It's called, they're calling themselves a group of Warlords Tourism in the lead up to the Summer Olympic Games, which will be held in Tokyo in 2020. And they're looking for people to fill out their troupe. And if you're able to do this, I would absolutely recommend throwing an application in. You can throw in an application between now and Tuesday. They close on the 22nd. And you don't have to speak Japanese because occasionally the troupe will perform in English. Satoshi Adachi of Aichi's Tourism Promotion Department acknowledged that ninjas are basically required to be secretive. Our ninjas have to be good at talking to... Our ninjas also have to be good at talking to promote tourism. So this looks like $20,000 a year to basically draw people to Japan. It's the same thing as, like Cirque du Soleil, if that was held in whatever country for the Olympics. Yeah, the ninja team is called, if you want to go ahead and look this up, the Ieyasu Tokugawa and Hanzo Hattori ninja team. And that was difficult for me to say, so I know it's going to be hard to spell. If you go to NBC News and type in "calling all ninjas," you'll find the article and has all the information there. But yeah, so if you ever wanted to be a ninja, you just have to be athletic, acrobatic, and ready to promote tourism in Japan for the Summer Olympic Games. Like I said, 100% not a joke. All real. As weird as it seems. Alright, looking ahead to weather. Currently it is around 43 degrees outside, partly cloudy, but like I said, all week there's been enough of a brisk breeze to make a jacket nearly necessary. Tomorrow we're going to see a very similar forecast, high 44, low of 27. Mostly sunny, but I'm assuming there's going to be a wind most of the week. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we're looking at rain. 50% on Tuesday, 80% between Wednesday and Thursday. Highs in the 50s and mid to upper 40s. Friday, high of 41, low of 33, with a 50% chance of rain. Saturday, we get the sun back, high of 45, low of 34. And next Sunday for Easter Sunday, is going to be 49 degrees with a low of 35. Mostly cloudy, but no rain on the weekend, which is perfect for Easter weekend. So yeah, all of the rain we're looking at next week is going to be right in the middle of the week. And this would be perfect for Saturday and Sunday for some outdoor Easter eating. Alright, we're going to take another break here. When we come back, we'll get to some more news and a check of sports. What is SeaWorld finally putting an end to? And how old was the DUI that North Dakota completely threw out? All that and more when we come back to the 6-8 with DJ Eclectic here on WQBR Eagle Radio. Here is a block of Disturbed from the new album Immortalized, starting with The Vengeful One. There you go. That was The Brave and the Bold. Before that was Warning Sign. You're listening to the 6-8 with DJ Eclectic. I'm your host, Christopher Haig. Thanks for tuning in and listening. And like I said before the break, those three songs were all from Disturbed's new album, Immortalized. They are back at it again. They're back on tour. And I believe they're coming to Detroit at some point this summer. I don't remember off the top of my head when it's going to be. But yeah, after a 4-year hiatus, they released the album last summer and started a tour by the end of the year. Or released a tour by the end of the year. So yeah, very, very, very exciting. Anyone who knows me personally knows I'm extremely excited because I'm a huge Disturbed fan. Alright, jumping right into some more news, and as excited as I am about Disturbed, this should excite all of you animal lovers. SeaWorld announced this past week on Thursday that it would stop breeding its killer whales. So, for those of you who don't know, for years now, SeaWorld has had orcas in its care and has bred orcas within the confines of SeaWorld. And they've recently announced that they will be ending that program. There will no longer be a killer whale born into SeaWorld. And while this does have a lot of benefits to it, the opinion about it is pretty split. So on the one hand, you're not breeding orcas into captivity anymore. You do still have the ones you have in captivity. You know, that's part of the bigger issue, is that, you know, we have these beautiful animals still stuck in captivity, and to combat that, SeaWorld then came out and said that the shows that they have, the orca, the entertainment shows that they have using orcas would be at an end as well. And now they're just on display for you to see, like, if you were to go see the polar bears at the Detroit Zoo, how there's a tunnel underneath and you can see them swimming around. It's the exact same way for the orcas. There aren't going to be any more organized shows using the killer whales at SeaWorld. You know, SeaWorld came out and said, Joel Manby specifically, he's the president and CEO of SeaWorld Entertainment, said, and I quote, "SeaWorld has introduced more than 400 million guests to orcas, and we're proud of our part in contributing to the human understanding of these animals. As society's understanding of orcas continues to change, SeaWorld is changing with it. By making this the last generation of orcas in our care and reimagining how guests will encounter these beautiful animals, we are fulfilling our mission of providing visitors to our parks with experiences that matter." So yeah, they're also teaming up with a few animal advocacy organizations, and this was actually a major goal of the ones that they've teamed up with, was to, you know, stop breeding them, you know, just teach people about them, but don't keep reintroducing these animals into captivity, because should they need to be released into the wild for whatever reason, let's say something horrible happens and SeaWorld goes under, no pun intended. SeaWorld is gone. They'd have to release all of their animals into the wild, or, well, they could have to. And these orcas have no idea how to survive out in the wild. Like, captivity has crippled them. And that's part of the, I don't want to say mission statement, but that's what a lot of the animal advocacy groups call upon, is how severely crippled these animals in captivity are versus the ones in the wild. Like, out of the killer whales, 0.0% of them could realistically survive in the wild, because they've never had to. They have no training on being out in the wild. They would have no idea what to do. So yeah, the whale that is actually mothering the last set of killer whales is Takara. She's the last pregnant orca SeaWorld will ever have. You know, and SeaWorld, on top of this, did reaffirm its commitment not to collect marine animals from the wild. It's been nearly 4 decades since they collected an orca from the wild. And the orcas there were either born into SeaWorld or spent almost their entire lives in human care. And that's what makes them so unlikely to survive in oceans for any number of reasons. Pollutants and other man-made threats, and really just the experience of being around wild orcas who have to, you know, hunt for their food. They have to find their food. But yeah, so despite still going to have this last generation of orcas in SeaWorld, once they're gone, there won't be any more orcas in captivity, because there will not be any more orca babies. So, big win for animal advocacy groups. Alright, heading from wherever SeaWorld is to North Dakota. In one of the strangest stories this week, the North Dakota Supreme Court overturned the conviction of a man who was tried last year on a 20-year-old DUI charge. Jason Gale was arrested for drunk driving in '95 in Grand Forks, but wasn't called to court until last July. And the jury found him guilty, obviously. Gale's attorney, Scott Brand, argued to justices in December that the delay violated Gale's right to a speedy trial. Brandt told the Associated Press on Wednesday, quote, "The government was clearly negligent. It's 20 years. Memories are going to fade, and that was obvious at the trial. The officer just memorized his report. He didn't have any independent recollection as to what happened on that night." And Grand Forks City Prosecutor Christy Petit Van Huysen, I definitely said that wrong, did not respond immediately to an email request for comment. And I don't believe there's been a comment from Van Huysen. But yeah, so the Supreme Court heard this and overturned the conviction on this 20-year, because this charge sat in the courts. I don't even know if it made it to the courts 20 years ago, or whether it was, I don't know whose desk it had been sitting on for 2 decades. But yeah, 20 years old. Like Brand said, the officer memorized his report, which is a huge no-no. Yeah, it was overturned. The opinion released late Tuesday said that justices can't presume that a 20-year-old case was, quote, "diligently prosecuted when there is no evidence of any prosecution at all," and that 2 decades is an unprecedented amount of time for a DUI case to remain idle. However, despite not responding to an email for comments about it, Van Huysen argued that Gale made a concerted effort to avoid prosecution, and there was ample evidence to pursue the case. Brand said Gale moved to Colorado shortly after the DUI and was told by his previous lawyer that he would settle the case in Gale's absence. Later, Gale was involved in separate court cases in 2 North Dakota counties, and authorities failed to flag the outstanding warrant. So it looks like it wasn't just a failure of the courts. It looks like it was a failure of North Dakota county authorities. Van Huysen went on to say that the city sent Gale 3 notices 20 years ago telling him the case had not been settled. Gale said he wasn't aware of the warrant until he discovered it while applying for a job early this year. A judge rejected his request to dismiss the case and it went to trial. Gale lost to his order to pay a $5,000 fine. And Brand, as his closing comment, said this shows that justice may not be swift, but it will come when the right case presents itself. I'm having an issue talking today. So yeah, 20 years this DUI case sat in, I'm assuming it sat in the court systems. And then authorities in 2 different North Dakota counties failed to flag the outstanding warrant when Gale was involved in different court cases. And then he said he didn't know anything until he applied for a job, which is failure on all levels. And I'm glad this got overturned. I'm glad the conviction got struck. That would have been hell on earth. It really would have been. If you can get convicted for a DUI you committed decades ago, it'd be absolutely ridiculous. Luckily, the Supreme Court did see that it violated his constitutional right to a speedy trial, and nothing more is going to come from this DUI charge. All right, on to sports. We've got Tiger spring training, Red Wings, Pistons. But first, we have some March Madness scores. The first round is all the way over, and the second round is well underway. Some highlights from the first round. Number 13 seed Hawaii upset California 77-66. Number 11 Gonzaga beat number 6 Seton Hill 68-52. Wichita State beat Arizona 65-55. Number 12 Yale beat number 5 Baylor 79-75. VCU beat Oregon State 75-67. Stephen F. Austin upset West Virginia 70-56. UALR eked out a win against number 5 Purdue 85-83. And the single biggest upset was Michigan State's humiliating loss to Mid-Tennessee 90-81. I had the misfortune of watching that game, and it really was just a humiliating loss. Yeah. First round is over, second round is well underway. Moving on to Detroit sports, starting with the Pistons. They beat the Brooklyn Nets 115-103. Baines led the Pistons with 21 points. Drummond had 9 rebounds. The next game is tomorrow night at 7:30 against the Bucks at the Palace. Red Wings blitzed past the Panthers 5-3 with 3 goals scored in the third period. Tatar and Datsuk had goals in the first and second periods respectively. Larkin, Glendening, and Datsuk again had the 3 goals in the third. The next game is Tuesday night at 7:30 against the Lightning in Tampa Bay. And Tiger spring training, we absolutely crushed the Atlanta Braves earlier today, 8-2. Kinsler and Iglesias had hits to start off a 5-run first inning against Braves pitcher Bud Norris. They play Philadelphia next tomorrow and is considered an away game for the Tigers. So, even though a lot of people say spring training and, the off season doesn't count for anything, Detroit is looking very, very dominant, and it's very exciting to watch. Makes me excited for the season to actually start in April. Alright, last few things before we take another break here. Jared Fogle is in the news. The former Subway spokesman, now convicted child molester, was jumped and beaten up in prison this past week by a 60-year-old inmate. But when you make your footlongs only 11 inches, what can you really expect? Jennifer Aniston said that she bows her head in shame over some of the movies she's made in the past, showing that celebrities aren't always ego-driven. But by that logic, we should never see Adam Sandler's face ever again. And finally, a homeless man in San Francisco, California will receive $100,000 for helping catch 2 dangerous escaped convicts. It seems like a lot, but given California's cost of living, he'll only be able to upgrade from the street corner to a Motel 6 for all of 3 days. Those are my thoughts, not yours. You're listening to The 6-8 with DJ Eclectic here on WQBR Eagle Radio. Right now it's time to get up and dance to Lou Bega's Mambo number 5. Alright, there you go. That was Lambada by Kaoma. Before that was Asereje and Shake Your Bomb Bomb by Ricky Martin. It is currently 7:12 on this Sunday, the 20th of March. You're listening to The 6-8 with DJ Eclectic here on WQBR Eagle Radio. I'm your host, Christopher Haig. Thanks for tuning in and listening. Alright, so got a couple more weird stories here, stuff that'll make you really think about the world we live in. So, this story is out of Long Island. On the 16th, Wednesday, police responded to a Farmingdale State College in Long Island after a student called in to report a man with a weapon. The 911 call was placed at 20 to 10 Wednesday morning from a student who said they saw a man entering a vehicle carrying a weapon. And when the police found the man a short distance from campus, that's where his car was parked, I want you all to take a guess as to what they found him with. So the call from a student at a university was that there was a man in his car with a weapon. It's around a school. You figure it's a gun, right? A gun or an obnoxious-looking blade. Nope. None of the obvious answers, none of them that would make sense. The guy had a toy lightsaber. Yeah. Somehow this student at Farmingdale State College in New York mistook the toy weapon, or the toy lightsaber, for an actual weapon, which I'm not sure how many of you out there have seen the Star Wars movies, or not even seen movies, just seen pictures. The lightsaber, A, doesn't exist as a real weapon. B, the toy versions are so obnoxiously large that even from a distance, you know exactly what you're looking at. It's a toy version of a weapon that doesn't exist. Now, this story would be much different if the students saw it, let's say it turned out to be a BB gun or an airsoft gun or something along those lines, things that have been actually mistaken for weapons by police officers in the past. That'd be a different story. I could understand that. But seeing a toy lightsaber and calling 911, like, it didn't even strike the student as curious in any way, shape, or form, and maybe go to the professor and go, "Hey, professor, look at that guy. Am I seeing this right? Does it look like he's holding a lightsaber?" And like I said, you know exactly what you're looking at when you see one of them. There's no mistaking it for anything. The look of the lightsaber is so iconic and so immediately recognizable. No matter which model you have, everything's just as memorable as the next picture. And this student decided to freak out and put the campus on lockdown for between 45 minutes and an hour as police responded to the call. When police found that the suspect didn't have an actual weapon, Farmingdale students received an email ending the lockdown. Obviously, it was resolved without incident. The email actually read, "The police situation on campus has been resolved without incident. All students, faculty, and staff should resume normal activities. No injuries were reported, obviously, and no arrests were made, obviously." So here's the thing, right? Aside from it being, if not absolutely impossible, really frickin' close to impossible to mistake a toy lightsaber for a real weapon, putting that aside, why was the immediate jump to call 911 rather than alert a teacher first? Like, the guy wasn't waving it around at all. He wasn't getting out of his car. He wasn't walking to the school. He was getting back in his car with it. With the lightsaber. And the student freaked out. Now, I know what a lot of you are thinking. Chris, we live in 2016 with all of the incidents involving shootings at schools and school kids dying for no reason. Wouldn't you be proud of the student for, taking such immediate action and going right to the authorities? Skipping the school staff, because there's no guarantee they'd do anything about it, and jumping right to the police. In a normal situation, I'd 100% agree with you. In any and every other situation, I'd be 100% go, kid, go. So proud of you. He knows what he or she knows what they're doing, and was in enough of a solid state of mind to see a guy with what they thought was a weapon and go right to the police. Now, if it was a weapon, that a kid could have stopped another school shooting. But to not even question what the kid was looking at, to not look like any gun or any knife anybody's ever seen. The basics of a lightsaber is between 11 and 12 inches, normally straight cylindrical, with between a 24 and 30 12-inch blade coming out of the emitter. Now, depending on what toy this is, it may actually be one of the more expensive models, and it has installed in it a white blade for electronics. If the guy had that kind of lightsaber from Ultra Sabers or Saber Forge, I'd be even more disappointed in this kid. But let's go ahead and assume it was a basic toy with an extendable blade that clicks back into the hilt. Let's say that. It's still obnoxiously sized because it's a toy. A 12-inch, between 11 and 12-inch straight cylinder that normally has, depending on the model, some red activation button on it. Or some activation panel. Now, this is a college student. So this student is between 18 and 25. Let's go that high. An 18 to 25-year-old who doesn't know what a lightsaber looks like enough to not call 911 over a guy with a weapon? Really? I mean, you got a question. Are we so hypersensitive about things that we're jumping to these insane conclusions for no reason? Like, even less reason than a toy gun. A weapon that isn't a gun, isn't a knife, and doesn't exist. That's the thing. It doesn't exist. It's a children's toy representation of a blade of pure energy that doesn't exist. In no way, shape, or form can it actually be a real weapon. And I wish you guys could have seen how hard I face-palmed when I saw this story. It boggles my mind how we could be so... I mean, is society really that overly sensitive to the idea of someone bringing a weapon into school? That we're willing to jump on a guy and call the police on a guy just for having something that turns out not to be a weapon and could never be a weapon? Just because a student sees something and jumps right to 911. I mean, all it would take is a pair of smarter eyes to look at the dude in the car. You catch one glimpse of it, it doesn't matter what model he has. Whether it's a basic toy you could get at Target, something from Saber Forge or Ultra Sabers. You just need another pair of eyes looking at it, and you know immediately that this is nothing to worry about. I mean, I don't want to think that we're this insanely sensitive to the idea of school shootings and guys with weapons on campuses. I don't want to admit that we're this hypersensitive about it. But it's stories like this that make me realize, yeah, we are actually this insanely hypersensitive to even just the basic idea, even the concept of a school shooting. Like I said, if it turned out to be a BB gun or a replica, okay, I'd understand that. You know, that would have legitimate concern about it. But a lightsaber? From a guy who was getting back into his car. Not going anywhere near the school. Boggles my mind. Absolutely boggles my mind. Alright. Heading from Long Island back to Kalamazoo again. And this story is going to make you wonder what exactly goes through the heads of mainstream media when they see something and just go ahead and post it without any knowledge of the actual facts. Now, if any of you watch mainstream news, Fox, Channel 7, WDIV, I'm sure you've seen, or if you've been on Facebook, I'm sure you've seen the story of, or the reported story that the Kalamazoo shooter, whose name is still not going to be mentioned on this show for the same reasons I didn't mention it last week, the story was that he was going to sue Uber for $10 million for psychological damage. Now, it was a handwritten note, and at first it seemed legit. But, as any of you should know, you never take anything at face value, especially in the mainstream news. And, the sheriff's department didn't either. It was a hoax. 100% a hoax. The handwriting wasn't the killer's handwriting. It had Philadelphia postmarks on it, which is weird. Which, like, you see that, and that throws you off immediately. Because why would Michigan mail go to Philadelphia first? And on top of that, now while yes, the killer is fully allowed to write letters from jail, everything that leaves the jail is logged. There was no log of him sending anything of any kind to Uber or anybody. And even when the FBI talked to the killer, he said, and I quote, "I didn't authorize anyone to file a lawsuit, and I don't know who sent this," end quote. The complaint was filed with the U.S. District Court for Eastern Michigan and is available on Pacer, an online case locator for electronic court records. The handwritten document claimed that Dalton had been working for Uber for years, and that he wasn't invited to corporate parties or given a Christmas bonus. Uber Chief Security Officer Joe Sullivan said he began working for the company in late January 2016, just mere weeks before the shooting happened. However, there was a little bit of legitimacy to it, as the shooter had expressed grievances against Uber in the past. Shortly after the shootings, he told investigators he was reluctant to talk because he didn't want to come across as a crazy person. He went on to tell investigators the Uber app made him like a puppet, and that it would take over your whole body. So while he has had issues with Uber in the past, he didn't write this, he didn't authorize anyone to write this, there was no log of it in the prison, and it had Philadelphia postmarks on it. And yet, all of the mainstream, I saw Fox post this, I saw Channel 7 post this, I saw WDIV post this on Facebook. They were all reporting this like it was a real thing. And even like, okay, so let's say the official police report was that, okay, this was sent. And let's say they missed the Philadelphia postmarkings. I know how news is published. There are writers, there are editors, and then the editors send it on to get posted. Not a single person saw the Philadelphia postmarkings on the handwritten note, the handwritten complaint. Like on Facebook, I looked at it for all of 2 minutes, and I saw the Philadelphia postmarkings immediately. And while I don't know the specifics of the mail system, I saw them like, well, that's a little weird. He's here in Michigan. Why would it go to Philadelphia? I saw that immediately. A 19-year-old kid just looking on his phone, not even a full computer at the time. I saw it on my phone first. A small smartphone screen was big enough for me to see the Philadelphia postmarkings and know that something was wrong. No fact-checking at all. None from anybody who posted it. And I don't understand why they didn't fact check it. Like, it'd be such a simple process. Sorry about that. It'd be such a simple process to fact check it. First off, Philadelphia Post markings. Well, you know that Michigan Mail doesn't go to Philadelphia first. So you double check that, and that throws up a red flag. Then you look into it more. You go to the jail. Okay, well, this had to have come from jail. Let's talk to them. Oh, no logs? This isn't legit. Don't post it. 2 steps. And I know why there wasn't any fact-checking, and it's why I despise mainstream news. I hate it. The focus, the emphasis, isn't factual news. It's who can get the juiciest story up the quickest, for more hits, more traffic, more publicity. That's what the actual aim of mainstream news is, whether they admit it or not. They don't have to admit it. This shows it perfectly. Not a single ounce of fact-checking went into it. While I don't work for any news company, I know for a fact they didn't care about anything but the headline. Because I described 2 steps, 2 red flags, that one of which would get thrown up immediately. That would spark research and throw up the second red flag. Like, okay, shouldn't post this because it's not true. The focus of mainstream news, and it's why I don't use it as a source for this show, the focus isn't the truth. It's not news. It's headlines. It's who can get what up with the juiciest headline the quickest, who can beat everybody else to the punch. They'll get the traffic. They'll get the hits to their site. They'll get the publicity as being the exclusive news station to bring it to you first. Except what are they bringing? Certainly it wasn't the truth. We know that for a fact now. The complaint wasn't authorized. It wasn't the killer's handwriting. He didn't authorize anyone to file it. Came from a different state altogether. I don't know why, in a society where we get news anywhere and everywhere, any time of the day, 24/7, all day, every day, we get it on our computers, on the TV, on our smartphones, on the radio, from multiple channels. I don't know why mainstream media is so far behind in just basic fact-checking and making sure they're putting the news over the headline. That's why I don't use them as a source for the show. I use alternative news sources. SourceFed, Philip DeFranco, Dave and Chuck the Freak. I don't go to CNN or WDIV. I don't check up on Fox to get news. You can't trust it. And this story shows that I'm 100% right, that you can't trust the news to be news. You can't trust them to do their job. It's because of the society that we live in and the attitude towards showing dominance in a market. All right, guys. I'm going to put this out here right now. I promise that there is going to be a show that doesn't have Donald Trump in it. I promise. I know it seems like I'm promising the impossible. And I didn't want to talk about Donald Trump this week. I wanted to stay away from politics as much as I could this week. But I just couldn't. It's because of the headline of this story. It's because of what this story is about. Donald Trump's volunteer contract. 6 pages of contract for volunteers, not people employed by Trump, but his volunteers all sign a 6-page contract that forbids all criticism of Donald Trump for life. And that goes for the Trump himself, any of his family, any of his businesses, not just for the duration of the volunteer work. Which, okay, that would make sense. You don't really even need a contract for that. If you're volunteering for the guy, don't bash the guy. You're volunteering for him. But to have them sign a multi-page contract that says you can't criticize Trump at all for life, for the rest of your life, is absolutely mind-boggling crazy. It is. It's 100% craziness. And I don't understand it. In addition to forbidding volunteers from disparaging Trump, the contract also includes a sentence that demands volunteers prevent their employees from criticizing Trump, thus making volunteers responsible for the free speech of others for an indeterminate amount of time. It's a contract that Donald Trump, the man running for president, the man who's probably going to get the GOP bid, and has a good chance of becoming president, it's a contract he thought up. And he has all his volunteers sign. And what's weirdest about this is that he has all his volunteers, mind you, sign this. And the tight control of the volunteers is such a ridiculous contrast to not only normalcies in American political campaigns, but also Trump's reputation for speaking his mind. This guy who thinks he can say whatever, whenever, is keeping volunteers from doing the same about him. This contract first came to light late last week after Trump campaign emails indicated that some prospective volunteers were required to sign a non-disclosure agreement in order to make calls for the campaign from Trump Tower in Manhattan. I don't know why this exists, like why he's treating the First Amendment like he can decide who it does and doesn't apply to. And even Davida Perry, an employment lawyer in New York, says, and I quote, "I guess he doesn't know about the First Amendment. This is really shocking." He really is treating the First Amendment like it's a bonus. It's an employee bonus, and he gets to pick and choose who to give it to. Now, the ideas of this contract, non-disparagement, non-disclosure, non-compete agreements, they're common in business contracts, but they apply to employees, people who are paid, who receive compensation for their time and their work. These are for volunteers. These are for people that aren't treated like employees, who get nothing out of this. Technically, the contract, for as much as Trump would like to push the contract as, oh yeah, this is absolutely a thing I can do, it's legally unenforceable. Because the volunteers give up their rights but get nothing in return. And this is from Samuel Streicher, who directs the labor program at NYU Law School. The Trump campaign could risk a lawsuit by forcing volunteers to give up so much without treating them as employees. That's from Jeanne Christensen, an employment lawyer at Wigder LLP. The contract extends down to the lowest levels of the Trump campaign, including at call centers where people spend hours making phone calls to convince other citizens to vote for Trump. And I want to, I'm going to read you two excerpts from the no disparagement and no competitive services question. This is from the contract, verbatim, and I quote, "During the term of your service and at all times thereafter, you hereby promise and agree not to demean or disparage publicly the company, Mr. Trump, any Trump company, any family member, or any family member company, or any asset any of the foregoing own, or product or service any of the foregoing offer, in each case by or in any of the restricted means and contexts, and to prevent your employees from doing so." That was no disparagement. Here's no competitive services. End that quote. "Until the non-compete cutoff date, you promise and agree not to assist or counsel, directly or indirectly, for compensation or as a volunteer, any person that is a candidate or exploring candidacy for the President of the United States other than Mr. Trump, and to prevent your employees from doing so." So, for those of you who don't speak legalese, or in Trump's case, who don't speak straight BS, the non-disparagement section says basically that while this campaign is going on, and at all times after it ends, you promise and agree per the terms of the contract not to speak out publicly or demean anything that has the Trump name on it. Donald Trump, Ivanka Trump, Trump University, Trump Steaks, Trump Water. The latter of the three are all embarrassing failures. Of course, I can say that because I didn't sign the contract. And the no competitive services is, pretty standard. You can't help anybody else while you're helping Trump. Obviously, like, you're a volunteer for Trump, you're not allowed to help anybody else, which is standard for most companies to do so, but it's weird that he's making a volunteer do it. And in both excerpts, it ends with, "and to prevent your employees from doing so." So if I own a company, and I volunteer for Trump, for whatever reason, I'm out of my mind, I'm high on something, I decide to volunteer, I can't say anything bad about anything that has Trump's name on it, and that's fine for the campaign. I'm not even going to touch it thereafter. But then I have to make sure that everybody who works under me does the same thing. Then that means not only am I signing the contract for myself, I'm signing it for all my employees. That's not okay. Even on the most basic level. Shutting somebody up who works for you for free, not only during your campaign, but all times thereafter. And while that term isn't specific, it leaves it open to whatever Trump decides. Shutting somebody up and making them shut their employees up is basic stripping of the First Amendment. Now, understand in some cases, if the no disparagement was reworded to drop all times thereafter and prevent your employees from doing so, can't understand that. It's still shady that he's making volunteers sign this contract, but by editing the non-disparagement section, so basically, during your time of service, you can't speak out against Trump or any Trump companies, but only during the duration of the campaign, which seems pretty okay. I mean, you're working for the guy. Don't go out and bash him. Seeing interview after interview of Trump fans, they can't find a bad thing to say about the guy. It's like they live in their own little bubble. But that's beside the point. If that was edited to take out the employees and all times thereafter, it'd be fine. It's a lot of companies have, an unwritten rule, an unspoken rule. While you're working for the company, don't bash the company publicly. If I still had my job at Kroger that I had last summer, and I get interviewed about Kroger, and I rail on the company publicly, that's not okay. That's one of those unwritten, unspoken rules. You just don't do that while you're an employee. But Trump took it above and beyond, saying that not only can you not do it during the campaign, but you can't do it after the campaign, and your employees can't do it during or after the campaign. DeVita Perry went on to say, I don't see how this stands up. I don't see how a court enforces this. And it really is unenforceable. There's no way, even if you sign this contract, there's no way you are legally bound to it. There's no way to enforce it. Though knowing Trump and his lawyers, he could probably find some way to circumvent the obvious stripping of the First Amendment. Bit later on in the article, this next section describes how the term thereafter is defined. In the event of a Trump victory in November's general election, the non-compete clause would extend until his 2020 re-election campaign or even 2024 at the end of a second Trump term. If Trump loses but wants to run again in the next election or in any presidential election in the future, the contract states the volunteer cannot work for another candidate. The second half of that is just as baffling as the rest of this article. The rest of this idea. If Trump loses in November, but wants to go again in 4 years, or do it at a later date, even if the volunteers' views change and they realize how idiotic supporting Trump is, and they decide that they like a different candidate better in the future, the non-compete clause says that they can't switch. They're bound to Trump and all of his presidential campaigns. But again, at the same time, there's nothing that can be done about this because the volunteers, not employees. They're not compensated for any of their time or any of their work. There's no way that this can be held up in any court. And should come as no surprise, but the Trump campaign did not respond to a request for comment. So, all this is going down and Trump's not saying a word. For better or for worse, I suppose. Alright. And from one story of crazy to the next, and this will be the last bit of news. before the weather check and the end of the show. A YouTube personality by the name of Jim Sterling was sued by Digital Homicide, which is an indie game developer. In 2014, Jim posted a review of DH's game Slaughtering Grounds, posted it to YouTube. Digital Homicide, ever classy as they are, even back then, made a new YouTube series called Review the Reviewer, where they, quote-unquote, reviewed Sterling's video by overlaying text, calling him an idiot, and basically saying he was worthless and that he leeches profits from other people. The drama ball has started rolling. Sterling responded to that review with his own review. The cycle continued, attracted attention from other gamers, and they started finding DH game assets ripped straight from Google and other artists. Digital Homicide's next step, again, ever classed as they are, they issued a takedown on Sterling's original review. And if you guys can remember back a few weeks ago to my own rant about fair use and YouTube's broken copyright system, you'll know that what DH did is absolutely not okay and breaks the fair use laws. Reviewing criticism. That's like number 1 or number 2 on the list of things that are okay under fair use. And not surprisingly, Slaughtering Ground, alongside other Digital Homicide games, were just review bombed on Steam. Like all 0% reviews. Not shocking. Fast forward to now, Digital Homicide has officially laid out a lawsuit, $10 million for libel, slander, and assault. Not only that, Digital Homicide is holding him personally responsible for all the harassment by his fans, which, again, is not okay. None of it was controlled by Sterling. He never told any of them to go out and do any of it. It was their volition. They did it on their own. And Digital Homicide, being an indie development company, tried to crowdfund money for legal fees, but failed when people used the page for more harassment. It turns out this isn't the only time this has happened. Fun creators were slammed by another YouTube personality called Total Biscuit for their game. He had the legitimate review taken down through YouTube's copyright system. Again, not okay because it's fair use. Then they attempted to blackmail him several times and tried to force him to remove both his tweets about the company and their game, but his YouTube channel entirely. And even Rooster Teeth's news channel, The Know, has been a victim of this. When they revealed that a game dev was hiking up his game's prices right before a Steam sale to manipulate the impact of the discounts of the Steam sale, their video receipt was taken down and the channel was given a copyright strike. 3 cases of fair use being thrown out the window, game devs throwing a hissy fit, and abusing the copyright system. And I watched Rooster Teeth's video about the Steam sale when it came out. 100% fair use. It was a legitimate review and criticism of what this guy was doing to cheat more money out of Steam users. Short and simple, he was cheating money out of them. Total Biscuit. I went and looked up a re-uploaded copy of his review. Same thing. Legitimate review and criticism, but YouTube's copyright system was abused. And then the blackmail, which was crazy, they sent him an email saying to remove his tweets about the company's YouTube channel entirely, and that they and their lawyers would deny it if he tweeted an image of the email. It was all sorts of shady. And then Sterling is being sued for $10 million for libel, slander, and assault, all of which are baseless accusations. More than baseless accusations, really. Yeah, all victims of the lack of fair use and the lack of legitimacy to YouTube's copyright system. And if you were listening to my show a couple of weeks ago, you'll remember my whole 15-minute rant about it. When I mentioned why there's no archive for the show. Yeah. Crazy, crazy world we're living in. It's scary. It really is scary for any content creators. They can't do anything without the system in place to keep their content online being abused for no reason. Alright, we got one last check of weather here before I sign off for the week. Brisk week. Warm, but brisk. Jacket was necessary nearly every day. And it looks like we're getting more of that next week. Tomorrow we're looking at a high of 46, low of 27, mostly sunny. Tuesday through Friday, we're getting rain every day. Highs in the mid to upper 40s and 50s on Tuesday specifically, with 56. Saturday, we go back to mostly sunny, high of 47, low of 30. And Sunday is going to be a high of 54 with a low of 35. So while we're getting rain most every day this week, it's going to warm up for Easter weekend. Should be perfect for outdoor barbecuing, outdoor Easter eating. All right, and with that, that's going to do it for the 6th Date with DJ Eclectic this week. Thanks for tuning in and listening. I will see you guys back here, same time, same place. Well, actually, not next week. I'm going to mention this now. Because it's Easter, I will not be broadcasting next week. I'm taking the holiday off. So I won't be back until April 3rd. So until then, remember to take care of yourselves and each other. Have a great week. Have a great Easter.